Morning, everyone. We are going to wait 1 or maybe 2 minutes to get started. We're expecting a few more people, but don't worry, we're not going to wait too long. I'm Anna Bedard, and we look forward to getting started, and we're excited to have you here today.
We have someone in the chat that says they can't hear.
Deborah, one of our team members will help. All right, we are going to get started. Welcome, everyone, to the Office of Illinois Works, providing impactful wraparound and student support services session. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us. Over the next 3 hours, you'll have an opportunity to learn more about the specific guidance for the Illinois Works wraparound services and student support services. The target audience for this session includes wraparound service coordinators, student support coordinators, wraparound service and student support service supervisors, and relevant partners if perhaps you were referred by a grantee. My name is Dr. Anna Bedard. I am with the professional development team of Illinois Works, and I'm excited to be here with you today. I've been with the program for 6 months now. I have done workforce development and nonprofit capacity building for another 15 years, and before then, actually worked in nonprofits for many years. We have a great team with us, and many of our team, if you want to go to the next slide, Jeff, are with us here today. And I just want to review who we are and allow them to come onto camera and say hi. My guess is you've met many, or at least seen many of us, but it's always nice to make sure that you've got a name together with a face, since we may not see each other that often. Dr. Norman Ruano is our leader, the Deputy Director of Illinois Works. He's not on today, but we do have our two grant managers, Dan Martinez and Monica Pruitt. You want to come on camera and just say a quick hello?
Hi, good morning, everyone.
Sorry, you guys, I didn't set you up well for that.
We're working in
Both,
unison.
both Dan and Monica will be leading part of the program as well with me. So thank you so much for joining us. And then we also have Dr. Jeffrey Doolittle. Jeff, you want to come on camera, Jeff? Jeff is doing our behind the scenes, making sure the slides go and that the Mentimeter works. You want to say hi, Jeff?
Yep, welcome everyone. Glad to have you here.
And Carlita Alston will be monitoring the chat, and she is also a training analyst and program coach. Carlita, you want to say hi? Come on camera.
Good morning, everyone.
And finally, last but certainly not least, Dr. Gia Suggs, who leads our professional development team. Gia.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome.
Great. All right, let's keep going. What are we doing today? As you know, we're part of Illinois Works, and Illinois Works was created as a result of Governor Pritzker's commitment to expanding equity in the Illinois construction workforce. You know, some of these things we've said before, we're going to continue to say, because I think we don't all we sometimes we hear new things when we hear them again. I know certainly, and I've been doing this for 6 months now, and just yesterday I was in a conversation where I was like, oh yes, you're right, that is what we're up to. Not that I didn't already know it, but I heard it in a new way and was able to apply it in a new way. And that's our hope for you today, that some of what we're doing uh, is talking to you about some of the things that are already in the grant manual. And so you've read them. And it's my hope and our hope that you'll hear things in a new way today, in a way that will empower you in new ways to serve. And we've got new content that you haven't heard at all. And so that's going to be really fun. And you'll have an opportunity to learn from each other as well. And really, this training is designed to provide you with the knowledge, skills, and techniques necessary to deliver effective wraparound services and student support services in alignment with our Illinois Works pre-apprenticeship program best practices. And so staff who are providing wraparound student services and student support services, you'll be able to leverage the experience of others as well as the experience and the information that the staff is sharing with you. You want to go to the next slide, course objectives. So by the end of the training, you will be able to articulate our equity focus. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that and talk about the data that impact that Illinois Works construction trades. You'll gain a deeper understanding of the target audience and explain how wraparound services and student support services support our core values in Illinois Works. We'll leverage brainstorming as a technique to help you generate new and innovative ideas and determine the necessary support for your participant population. So it'll be immediately you being able to think about your program and your population. You'll also be able to, by the end of this training, respond to student support alerts in IWRS, comply with ADA requirements, employ rapport building best practices, practice active listening, cultivate relationships with participants. You'll be able to explain the impact of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which is, I think, really important in understanding where to start with people and how to understand the needs of the participants that you're working with. Describe the role of partnerships, list potential partners. Grantee manual. Over the next 3 hours, we'll take a deep dive into the Illinois Works wraparound services and student support services. By now, you should have accessed the Illinois Works 2024 Grantee Manual. This is your resource for instructions, guidance, tools, expectations for program design, implementation, and delivery. You'll notice references to this document during this training, as we have done in other Illinois Works trainings. And if you have not yet accessed the document, or if you don't have it in front of you, a link is being provided for you in the chat now. You'll be able to reference some of the content from this webinar in section 6, participant wraparound services and student support services. So that's a lot of where we will be drawing from. Please note that we are recording the session. This session will be available for review. Maybe you have somebody else in your organization who you'd like to watch it. And the link to our Illinois Works partner guide is now being made available in the chat as well. Any questions before we proceed to the next section? All right, let's keep going. By the end of this section, you'll be able to use WebEx and identify what you hope to learn from this training. You know what I'd like to do? I'd like to ask folks, if you have been in a program before, will you raise your hand? You know, you can raise your hand by going to the bottom of the screen and there's like a little picture of a hand. Raise your electronic hand so we can see if you've done this before and how in depth we need to go. Okay, I am going to review it so that we can make sure that everybody uh, can participate. This is going to be super quick WebEx tutorial. You see here on the screen the meeting info in case you need it for some reason in upper left-hand corner. But I think what's most important is along the bottom, you've got your tools. So you can mute and unmute yourself. For instance, if you need to talk, you can start or stop your video if at some point you need to do that. Raising your hand is that little hand. So can we practice? Raise your hand. Oh, awesome. I see Jonathan found his hand. Yeah, I see people raising their hands. Great. Let's see them raised. Okay, thank you. So your hands there across the bottom. There's also reactions if you want to give us some love. That would be awesome. And then next emojis a chat, which is probably the single most important one of all of these. That is in the lower right hand corner. It's that little chat bubble, little messages bubble. So when you click on that, it'll bring up your chat. If you have a question at any time, please feel free to put it in the chat. And we stop every so often to ask, are there questions in the chat? And then we'll have a chance to respond to your question. That's what we got. Next slide, please. Great, Mentimeter. The link to Mentimeter is being put in the chat. Feel free to open another browser to do it because we'll be asking you to type some things. It might be faster on your computer than on your phone. However, you may also feel free to use your phone. And the link is now in the chat. Feel free to just click on that link, or you can type in www.menti.com and put in the code. The code is at the top of this screen as well, and the code is 41772789. So let's do introductions. What's your name and what's your organization? And please add an asterisk if you've previously attended an Illinois Works webinar. I think people are still getting in. Welcome, Shubra. Welcome, Brittany. Good to see you. I see Karis put hers in the chat. Welcome, Karis. Welcome, Carrie and Jackie and Des, Chantrell. So we have folks from all sorts of different areas in the state. Katie, welcome. Deborah, Tiara, William, Katrina. See Scott Terry's joining us. Sarah. Jeff, I don't know if you need to scroll or it automatically scrolls. Welcome Daisy, welcome Jonathan. Some of you I know, it's great to see you. Some of you I don't, it's great to see you. I see we've got Javier or Xavier, I think, and Quentin, Anna. Welcome everyone. Great, great, Jamie. Yeah, see, some people have longer titles and organizations that they need to type in. Awesome. It's great to see everybody here. It's good to see a representation from so many of our partner organizations. Welcome, Denise. And Dan is reminding people in the chat that we will be using Mentimeter throughout the meeting. So if you haven't gotten in yet, please just know that we are going to be doing this multiple times in this meeting. So please join in. Let's go. Let's keep going. Let's keep going a little more. All right, so, and we already talked about the staff roles, so we can keep going past this. Question, is there anything in particular that you are hoping that we'll cover today? You know, what's on your mind? You're out there doing the work. Hi, Marilu, good to see you. you're out there doing the work, anything on your mind in terms of what you're trying to accomplish, what you're hoping this workshop will help you with. All right, let's keep going. Contact information. Just want to let you know, and we always put this up here. If you have any further comments, question, feedback, then feel free to email us. This is the email. It is also being put in the chat, ceo.ilwgrantmanagement@illinois.gov. Any questions or comments before we go to the next section? Great. I love it that we are getting efficient with this so that we've got sufficient time to really work with the content that's going to really make a difference for you. In this section, you will be able to articulate the Illinois Works equity focus, explain the data that impacts the Illinois Works construction trades, describe the Illinois Works target audience, explain how wraparound services and student support services support our core values, list the factors that may impact pre-apprentice participants, and leverage brainstorming as a technique to generate new or innovative ideas. Illinois Works has a focus on 3 target populations: women, people of color, and veterans, because these populations have been underrepresented in construction and the building trades. Veterans actually are not underrepresented in construction in Illinois, but they are part of our target population as per the Illinois Jobs Program Act. So it's women and people of color have been underrepresented, and veterans are included because of the Illinois Jobs Program Act. Illinois Works has an equity focus. It was specifically and intentionally designed to increase equity and opportunities in capital construction jobs for underrepresented groups, including people of color, women, and veterans. Equity, along with diversity, belonging, and inclusion, tie the Illinois Works pre-apprenticeship program's core values and requirements together. Equity focus is also one of the Illinois Works pre-apprenticeship program requirements for high-quality pre-apprenticeship program that aims to significantly increase apprenticeship opportunities for historically underrepresented populations. An equity focus requires the ability to demonstrate an understanding of how race, ethnicity, and gender impact individual access to, experience with, and ultimately success within a construction and building trades pre-apprenticeship program. There is a resource available to you, and that's Table 8 in the Grantee Manual. It's called Equity, What You Can Do, and that's on page 51 in your 2024 Grantee Manual. But let's talk about the data. Data shows that the construction industry, as well as the trades, have not been accessible for the many diverse groups, which has resulted in fewer than 10% of apprenticeships being extended to women and minority groups in many of the higher paid trades. The Illinois Works Job Program Act was intentionally designed to increase equity and opportunity in capital construction jobs. I'm going to repeat that because I think it's important that we all be grounded in the mission of Illinois Works Job Program. The Illinois Works Job Program Act was intentionally designed to increase equity and opportunity in capital construction jobs. And indeed, Illinois Works is structured around that goal. According to the Illinois Department of Labor and the U.S. Census population estimates as of July 1st, 2021, the following are the percent of apprentices employed by the state's construction industry by groups compared to the state and national percentages. So you can see here, and let me just walk through this table for you. We've got the state population on the left. And then in the three columns, what's the percentage? For instance, there's 11% of the employees in the Illinois construction and trades are women. And that's 11%, even though 49% of the Illinois population is women. So and it's kind of vaguely interesting that our population of women is slightly lower than the overall US population. I'm going to focus on those second and third columns, who we are in Illinois, and what percentage of our population are in the construction and trades in these different areas. And so we can see here that African Americans are only 6.3% of the employees in the Illinois construction and trades, even though they're almost 15% of the Illinois population. Now, the Hispanics, Latinos actually look like they're doing pretty good because they're 21.2% in Illinois construction and trades versus 18% of the Illinois population. However, what I will say is that Latinos, Hispanics tend to be in the lower paying trades. And this is an opportunity for them just to reach more equity in those higher paying construction trades. American Indians, Native Alaskans are less than 1% in the trades versus being 0.6%. So that is very, very low. And then Asians, 2.1%. So about a third of what they would be at parity in the Illinois population. And veterans are 7% in the Illinois construction and trades versus 4.3% in the Illinois population. I think it's helpful to just be present to the numbers. Let's go to the next slide. Our goal is to expand apprenticeship opportunities with a targeted focus on underrepresented populations, specifically women and people of color, and also with a focus on veterans as well. An expansion of apprenticeship opportunities will not only help boost employment and wages for more Illinois residents, it will also yield significant benefits for our economy at large because the construction sector is projected to grow at 12% in the next 10 years. So we have a growing need, and we need a workforce that can meet that need. On average, jobs in the sector pay $18 per hour to apprentices enrolled in DOL registered apprenticeship programs and $32 per hour to those that successfully graduate and achieve journey worker status. Investments in job training in the construction industry also result in significant long-term economic impact for the state, totaling $1.2 billion. In fact, for every dollar invested in construction job training, Illinois obtains $11 in social and economic returns. So you can see it is really important for the state of Illinois. It's an expectation of Illinois Works that your organizations collect specific data to identify barriers that may impede targeted groups from gaining and retaining employment in construction and the trades. Collecting appropriate data can help you better understand how intersecting characteristics interact, creating forms of exclusion and marginalization with respect to range of program outcomes. You are no strangers to this. We are asking you to collect data and identify barriers. There are many complex and interconnected barriers that can hinder participants' ability to access employment opportunities. For instance, racism and sexism. Sexism may intersect with an African American mother's need for childcare and transportation, exacerbating exclusion from an industry traditionally dominated by white males. Let's go to the next slide. The Illinois Works pre-apprenticeship program is rooted in 6 core values. These values are the foundation of the Illinois Works program design and run through all stages of the pre-apprenticeship life cycle. The 2 that are most pertinent for our discussion today are overcome barriers and empower for resilience and self-sufficiency. The first is overcome barriers. The foundation of the Illinois Works program is ensuring equitable access and opportunities to historically underrepresented populations. Illinois Works grantee should focus on building an environment that eliminates or reduces the impact of structural barriers facing participants and celebrates cultural, ethnic, and gender differences. Wraparound services and student support services are essential to easing those barriers for participants to join the program, finish the program, and have long-term success. The next core value is empower for resilience and self-sufficiency. Program design and implementation should focus on how participants will complete the program successfully, but also on teaching participants long-term skills that will allow them to build resilience, become self-sufficient, and secure a long-term career. Even though wraparound services are only available during the tenure of the program, acknowledging the needs of participants during the program can also open up a conversation to those needs beyond the program. This can help participants begin to plan for how they will address those needs or barriers once they are no longer in the program, teaching them invaluable skills like long-term planning or how to access resources and services. So while you are not responsible for wraparound services as a grantee beyond the program, you may seek to help students address those issues through alternate programs or perhaps to help them develop plans that extend beyond graduation. Additional impactful factors that may affect Illinois Works participants include, although they are not limited to race, ethnicity biases, gender biases, negative perceptions regarding women working in the construction or building trades, knowledge regarding occupational opportunities within the construction and building trades industries, equal access to opportunities for training, or even a hostile or unwelcoming workplace environment or culture. We're going back to Mentimeter. Let's answer the question. So let's go back to Mentimeter. Based on your experience, what additional factors might impact the needs of your targeted audience? And Carlita, if you can put that Mentimeter back in the link back in the chat in case there's somebody who joined since we were at the beginning. You want to go into Mentimeter, whether it's opening another browser on your screen or through your phone, and answer the question that's prompted based on your experience. What additional factors might impact the needs of your targeted audience? So let's just see. You are not in it alone. Everybody's dealing with similar but different situations. What are you facing, and what are your participants facing that might impact their how they're in the program or their success in their career? Imposter syndrome, that is, I just want to say I agree. And a lot of times it's those psychological needs that are so important, and it's not written in the NCCER curriculum necessarily, but you as organizations really need to think about how do you work with your participants to help them overcome some of those internal barriers that they might have. And then there are absolutely all the external barriers. Paying rent, so key. Fear of not belonging, another internal barrier. The mentality that all Black women, okay, so that's an external barrier. That, or maybe perhaps even internal, I don't know, in the particular circumstance, it could be either. Finances, absolutely. Transportation, housing for re-entry. Toiletries, sometimes it is the basics. Childcare assistance, driver's licenses, you have to be able to drive, mental health issues, reliable transportation. So it's not just they need money for gas, right? And that's part of the wraparound services that you can provide, but they need a car to be able to put gas in it. Transportation, many participants don't have it. Dealing with microaggressions as a Black person, absolutely. That is something that when they go out in the workforce, that it's a daily occurrence. It could be lack of funds to purchase tools required for the first apprentices. Yeah, so economics absolutely play a part in it. Thank you. Let's move to the, we have more. Great. Legal involvement. Food for SNAP participants whose benefits were reduced. So much of this is economic. It's economic, and it has to do with, racism, and it just has to do with their economic position. And it's why it's so important that in this program, you're able to pay them a stipend so that they can address these issues. And then you can help them address some of these other issues that aren't addressed by that stipend through the wraparound services. Let's keep going. Brainstorming. Brainstorming is an opportunity for you to collaborate with colleagues and team members to search for new and innovative strategies to respond to participant needs and improve your overall program performance. So even just what we did, right, where I was asking you, hey, what are the issues? That was some brainstorming. You were all putting your ideas in the hopper, and that's what we're going to do now. Given the needs of your program participants, who might be appropriate to participate in a brainstorming session to consider new and innovative strategies to provide support? So let's start with that. So if you are thinking about your program participants, and maybe there a lot of those are the wraparound services. For instance, we have a whole list in the grantee manual. Those are obvious. There might be some, like I saw some here on the list, that are not in the list in the grantee manual, and yet those are important needs to take into consideration. And so the first place to start is, who do you even want to invite to a brainstorming session so that it's not you sitting at your desk trying to figure everything out alone? You absolutely can, and I don't want to say should, but I think it would absolutely benefit you to include other minds in this. So include new program staff. They often see operations from a new perspective because they haven't yet been acclimated into what's expected and not expected in your program. It may be an opportunity to solicit new and innovative ideas. Seasoned program staff, they may have observations that have generated ideas for improvement. However, they haven't been invited to share those ideas in the past. Providers can contribute by effectively delivering a needed service. Their engagement with a grantee may have provided them with a unique vantage point that they can share with you regarding strategies for improvement. And partners. Partners are typically formally structured long-term relationships that work with grantees to address complex issues to achieve a shared goal. Program partners can also contribute unique perspectives to maximize outcomes. Community stakeholders, those may be individuals, groups, businesses, organizations who have an interest or an investment in your community. They often have an intimate knowledge of the community and the residents that may provide unique insights. And last but not least, from our list, professional associations typically provide industry-specific best practices, evidence-based practices, or evidence-informed practices that can be leveraged by grantees. So there's a lot of different places you can look. New program staff, seasoned program staff, other grantees, providers, partners, community stakeholders, professional associations. If you have somebody else that you have engaged in helping you think about how to provide things, what participants might need, what your apprentices might need, or how to provide it, hey, feel free to put it in the chat. We'd love to hear what you're doing. And but I'm not going to wait for that. We'll all be able to kind of watch as we go along. And that's brainstorming. So my invitation to you is, don't do it alone. Leverage the wisdom of those around you to help you come up with the best strategies and the best resources to help your participants. Questions or comments before we move on to the next section?
There was a comment regarding entering IWRS data for wraparound services.
Great. So Katie is asking about how, it's just one of the things you'd like to learn from today, how to enter wraparound services in IWRS. I don't, Gia, are we covering that today?
It's not formally a part of it, but we do have Dan and Monica with us.
Great. And what I will say is, yes, we have Dan and Monica who can help you to do that. And unless this is something that a lot, if we get a ton of people in the chat who are also asking for that, then actually entering wraparound services in IWRS, as a matter of fact, I am remembering next week, not next week, a week from next Monday, there is the wraparound services community practice, and that is one of the things that we will be covering at that session. Specifically, how do you enter things into IWRS? So let's keep going.
Anna, I'd just like to add, if Katie needs more immediate assistance, please contact myself if I'm her grant manager, or have her contact Dan directly if he's her grant manager, and we can certainly set up a time to walk her through that process. So we're always happy to do that.
That's great. Thank you so much, Monica. And certainly for anyone here, anytime you have an immediate need in regards to entering things into IWRS, or grant managers are always available to help you and happy to help you. All right, section 4, wraparound services. And this is where Monica comes in.
All right. Well, good morning again, everyone. If I haven't met you, my name is Monica Pruitt. I am the Downstate Pre-Apprenticeship Program Grant Manager for Illinois Works. I'm here so that we can dive into section 4, wraparound services. By the end of this section, you will be able to identify the location of wraparound services on the pre-apprentice life cycle, articulate the goal of wraparound services, complete a wraparound service assessment, explain how the stipend is designed to support participant success, respond to participant complex needs, assist participants in opting in and opting out of wraparound services. I think that, look, there may be more, but I think that's it. Okay, next slide, please, Jeff. Okay, for the attendants who have participated in some of our other webinars for the 2024 Grantee Manual, this graphic should look very familiar to you. The Illinois Works Pre-Apprenticeship Program requirements are organized in the pre-apprentice life cycle. The pre-apprentice life cycle outlines the steps that participants take as they move through the pre-apprenticeship program. It tracks participants' progress from initial program outreach to post-transition follow-up. Each stage demonstrates an integral step in preparing participants to enroll in DOL registered apprenticeship programs. Wraparound services is step number 4 on the pre-apprenticeship participant life cycle. Next slide, please, Jeff. Okay, here's where you come in. As wraparound service coordinators, you are responsible for non-academic supports, beginning with the wraparound service assessment during intake. This role will complete the assessment, set up necessary services, and work with the student support service coordinator to offer additional supports if participants begin to struggle academically. The WSC will also source from outside providers and partners other needed support services and refer participants to those services. Refer to Section 6, Participant Wraparound Services and Student Support Services in the 2024 Grant Manager for more information on the requirements outlined here. I'd like to point out that it is not a requirement that you have a wraparound service coordinator. However, it is a requirement that the roles of their responsibility are fulfilled by a staff member of your organization. Okay, wraparound services. Wraparound services is one of the primary tools for fulfilling Illinois Works' core values of overcoming barriers and empowering participants for resilience and self-sufficiency. Wraparound services is support that addresses non-academic needs. These can include an array of options. Participants must opt into wraparound services. They cannot be assumed or imposed. This model of services leads to greater self-sufficiency as it challenges participants to think through long-term planning for services. The opt-in model requires participants to meet with case managers one-on-one and establish services during the program while beginning to address those needs long-term. Okay, we're going to do a little activity here. I want you to take a moment to use your imagination. Just imagine from the perspective of your target audience or your program participants, there was an opportunity to receive a new car of your choice. The car is free, and I'm saying free in big, bold letters, underlined, but it's located about 100 miles from where you're located, and you have about 4 hours to make it to the new car. Someone is waiting at the location to give you the keys, but to get there, you have to use an older model car. The older car is about 15 years old. It has a manual transmission, or as some people know it, a stick shift. The car doesn't have gas. It has one flat tire. It's a rainy day, and the wipers don't work. Oh boy, let's go to Mentimeter to see how this works out. So, again, thinking about this situation from the perspective of the target audience or your participants, what are some things they may need? What may your participants need to make sure that they can make it to the next location in time to receive the free car? Let me also mention that I understand that some of your participants may be niche audiences, women, African Americans, veterans. So based on your audience, which specific barriers might they be presented with? Okay, got I can't drive a stick shift. I would fall into that category. Gas cards, a ride, some things they may need to ensure that they can get to the next. Yes, ask a friend, a ride, a Lyft or an Uber service. Okay. Unfortunately, that is not a wraparound service that Illinois Works can provide, but that might be a option. Bus pass, backup transportation, an agency van or transport. A participant may have childcare needs while they're getting to the car. Absolutely. All of these things are definitely things that could be a challenge for that person to get to the next location. A driver's license. Yes. Are there others? Okay. All of those are good. All of those are great. So we're going to move on because some participants may be able to fix a flat tire while others may not. Some participants may not have money to buy a gas card or I'm sorry, or new wipers. Others will. In this case scenario, we cannot even assume participants know how to drive. They may or may not be able to drive a stick shift. Perhaps they will have to make arrangements for childcare for the 4 hour window. I use this analogy to show how participants will come to the program with different needs, and Illinois Works is designed to promote equity by leveling the playing field for its participants. Wraparound services are important, but are only impactful if they are what the participants need. Each individual is different and may have different barriers and have to make sure barriers are identified to match the participant to the most appropriate wraparound services. So reality does shape our experience. The reality of your participants is shaped by their experiences. We should respect another person's perception or their mental model of the world. We are all unique and experience the world in different ways. Everyone is an individual and has his or her own way of being. A person's reality is shaped by his or her experiences. Therefore, my reality is not necessarily your reality, and vice versa. Next slide, please, Jeff. So, what tools are available? People make the best decisions based on what they have access to or what is available to them. Individuals can expect to be the best they Individuals can be expected to do the best they can with the tools she or he has available at any given time. Let's go back to the car analogy for a moment. If the individual never retrieved the new car, it may be perceived that she or he gave up the opportunity to have a free new car. There's a lot of judgment that can accompany this perception. Before the individual is judged, it is important to note accessing the new car was based on the older model car, which had many challenges. For those of us supporting participants, it is critical to keep in mind that our participants can only make the best decisions based on the resources they have available to them at that time. So let's talk a little bit about the definition of wraparound services. Wraparound services are defined as supports that address non-academic needs. These can include an array of items, but some common services are childcare, mental health counseling, and transportation. Participants again must opt into wraparound services. It should not necessarily be a situation where everyone in your cohort receives the same wraparound service. And also, it should be a matter that wraparound services are provided. There are, of course, some grantees who don't provide any wraparound services, and that should not be the case. This model of services leads to greater self-sufficiency as it challenges participants to think through long-term planning for services. All too often, programs provide a suite of support for participants while in the program, but when the program ends, participants are left without the skills or knowledge of how to address those needs. With the opt-in model, participants will meet with case managers one-on-one and not only establish services during the program, but will begin planning for long-term after the program ends in order to address these needs. The goal of wraparound services in the Illinois Works program is to create opportunities that are laser focused on minimizing or removing barriers so that participants have an equitable opportunity to complete pre-apprenticeship training and transition to registered apprenticeship programs and employment. Okay, we're going to go back to Mentimeter. Please use Mentimeter to answer the question on the screen. What wraparound services are most utilized by your participants? All right, let's see what you got. Transportation. Transportation is a huge one. Okay. Oh, we got 3 responses for transportation. Child care, gas, CTA cards, vehicle maintenance, gas cards, more child care. Absolutely. Are there more? Housing referrals. Yes. Food, housing, gas, more housing referrals, bus passes, gas cards. Yes. Ah, test taking assistance. Okay. Yes, transportation. Okay. Very good. Car repairs, tutoring. Okay. And those are definitely all things that we have seen childcare assistance as we're going through compliance. So all of those things are definitely there. Wraparound services may include, but are not limited to, transportation costs, child care and family member care, technology assistance for virtual learning, driver's education fees, financial literacy, digital literacy, and other wraparound support services. Uh, Next slide, please, Jeff. Just a moment. Actually, Jeff, I'm going to ask that we maybe go back to the last slide. I'm sorry. Okay, and what we're going to do now is just take a little deeper dive into some of the wraparound services that are provided. So the first one being, and seems to have been one of the more popular ones, is transportation costs. So a major barrier for many participants in an Illinois Works program may be reliable and accessible transportation. So as we've outlined, some allowable costs include public transit fare cards, car repairs up to a $500 threshold, gas cards, uh, license plate sticker or city sticker renewal fees. One of the questions that you're going to want to ask when you're talking to your participants is, do you have reliable transportation to and from the program? And what is your primary form of transportation? The next being child care and family member care. Caregiving for a child or family member can be a major barrier to participant success. Partial or total cost of care are allowed under the Illinois Works grant. However, programs should attempt to leverage alternate resources to help cover these costs as well. And those allowable costs can include child care and babysitting costs and home aid costs. One of the questions that will be asked during the assessment is, do you have family members that depend on you for care? And if so, will that family member have support or care while you're in the program? And based upon your answer to that question, your wraparound service coordinator can determine how they can best help you. Technology assistance for virtual learning. Um, Allowable costs, broadband and hotspot fees, purchase of laptops for lending to participants. One of the questions is, do you have reliable internet? And if not, obviously your wraparound service coordinator is going to figure out how they can help you with that. Driver's education fees, I found, has been a huge need for some of our Illinois Works participants. Having a driver's license is not a requirement to be a part of the pre-apprenticeship program. However, it is a requirement for most apprenticeship programs. If participants need to complete driver's education while attending the pre-apprenticeship program, the program may pay the required fees for driver's education and for a participant to obtain a driver's license. Financial literacy is the ability to manage money well, that can have a positive lifelong impact on students and help them far beyond the program. Financial literacy courses teach students the basics of personal finance, such as budgeting, saving, debt, and investing. These courses may also cover items such as explanations of pensions, retirement funds, and fringe benefits, amongst other things. So if you have a participant who does not feel confident in their financial skills, financial literacy would be the correct wraparound service for them. Uh, Digital literacy. If a participant identifies that they need assistance learning and or utilizing technology, including but not limited to desktop computers, laptops, or tablets, to fully participate in our program, a grantee can utilize grant funds to enroll the participant in digital literacy courses or pay a tutor to assist with these digital needs. So um, with each one of your assessments, you will ask guiding questions just to make sure your participant is comfortable in these areas. And if there's assistance needed, as the wraparound service coordinator, you will figure out how you can best assist them. Please note that some of the areas that had previously been considered wraparound services, such as apprentice application fees, mentorship, and alumni networking, those are no longer wraparound services, but now they are available under transition services. All right. Thank you, Jeff. I finally got to that next slide. Okay. Performance-based stipends. You, as the grantee, are required by the Illinois Works Program Act to provide stipends to all participants for instructional hours. You will notice that stipends are not considered a wraparound service because all participants are required to receive a stipend. However, we talk about them in relation to wraparound services because they serve a similar purpose of reducing barriers and empowering for self-sufficiency. Participants do not have to opt into the stipend. As I said before, that is a requirement that a stipend is paid for instructional hours. Stipends are a payment made to a trainee or pre-apprentice program participant for living expenses and are designed to ensure that participants can maintain financial solvency throughout the tenure of the program. All grantees must comply with the Illinois Works performance-based stipend policy, and a copy of that policy can be found in the appendix of the 2024 grantee manual. Uh, Grantees, please note if your policy meets or exceeds the Illinois Works policy, you may maintain your own policy. Keep in mind, however, if you choose to implement an alternate policy, it must be submitted to Illinois Works for approval. Next slide, please. So let's talk about our stipend policy. All policies must include the following items. Grantees must provide stipends up to $14.25 per instructional hour. Instructional hours are defined as training time spent in a classroom, construction lab, or doing worksite practicums. Stipends may not be paid out for hours spent on wraparound services, student support services, transition services, or doing follow-up. Stipend amounts must be the same for all instructional activities. That includes the orientation, which can be up to 4 hours, classroom instruction, construction lab instruction, and job site practicum experience. Stipends can only be provided to participants. Participants must be actively enrolled in the Illinois Works Pre-Apprenticeship Training Program in order to receive a stipend. Stipends must be reduced if participants do not meet or exceed attendance and performance measures. Participants are required to maintain an attendance rate of 80% or higher and score 70% or higher on modular post assessments. Not meeting these thresholds should result in a percentage-based reduction in stipends. So let's talk a little bit about stipends versus wages. While stipends are framed as an hourly rate, policies that are based solely on attendance will not be approved. Both academic performance and attendance must be included in the performance-based policy. It is important to remember stipends are not a wage and program participants are not employees. To receive a stipend, the training must be predominantly for the benefit of the pre-apprentice and cannot be connected to a job at the end of training, nor can pre-apprentices displace regular employees. Just one more note, do not use wage or wage equivalent language in your program materials or with participants. So we will not review these templates in detail. The intention is just to make you aware that these resources are available. So template 12 in the 2024 grantee manual is a sample Illinois Works performance-based stipend policy. It is important and required to provide all participants with both the stipend policy and procedures during orientation to ensure they understand how their stipend will be earned and distributed to them. Okay. The next resource that's there on the screen is Table 12, Participant Barrier Examples and Illinois Works Allowable Costs to assist in overcoming barriers. This resource can also be found in the appendix of the 2024 grantee manual, where it provides assistance with identifying specific programs and or services to help remove barriers. And that is found on page 94 of the grantee manual. Okay, table 13, other participant barriers and potential partners to assist in overcoming barriers. That particular document can be found on page 95 of the 2024 grantee manual. Okay, back to Mentimeter. So using Mentimeter, answer the question on the screen. What partnerships have you established to help provide wraparound services? What partnerships? What kind of, I think we're going to talk about partnerships a little bit more later, but what partnerships do you have in place so far? Free bus transportation, American Job Center. Okay. People still typing? RMTD. Now that's something that I'm not familiar with. Will the person uh who shared that maybe unmute yourself and just explain to us what RMTD is? Okay. Or feel free to put it in the chat if you like.
Monica, we have someone from the DMV.
The DMV. Okay, great. All of those are great partners. Um, Perhaps you would partner with other community organizations, schools that students go to, college support services, um, other nonprofits in your area, perhaps, local community colleges, maybe even some businesses. All of those are good. That's great. Okay. If there are additional answers, feel free to go ahead and put those in the chat. We'll go on and talk a little bit more about complex needs. So some populations may experience specific challenges that require support beyond Illinois Works scope of services. Because these groups may be identified as having more complex needs within the Illinois Works system, they should be provided with resources and information about programs and agencies that can assist in addressing their specific barriers. Right. I think maybe one last question here, Mentimeter. During a previous activity, we talked about subgroups within your participant cohort that might need wraparound services, maybe women or African Americans, veterans. Given the definition of complex need, have any of your participants presented with complex needs? How did your organization respond? Have any of your participants presented with complex needs? And how did your organization respond? Sure, people are still typing, so we'll give it another minute. When we met during the regional meeting, one thing that was shared as a complex need is housing for someone over the age of 21 who did not have children and were unemployed. So they were having a hard time finding housing for that. That was a complex need for them. We searched our resources and provided them with to the participant. Okay, so whatever that need was, you all reached out and provided them with some resources. Participant is unhoused and living in his car. Shelters are full. We petitioned to get him a gym membership so he'd have access to showers and be able to work out for health reasons. Okay, way to go, Hasia. Dyslex, dyx, I might have it. Dyslexia students. Okay. And how did your organization respond? Were you able to maybe perhaps work with the school for that student who was having problems? And again, if anyone has anything to share in the chat, feel free. Vehicle towing and then repair of car while trying to stay within the $500 threshold. Okay. We had a homeless person. We referred them to a housing shelter. that they have a partnership. We also gave them a gym membership to shower. Okay, great. Those are all wonderful responses. Um, that's excellent that there are resources available for everyone experiencing those complex needs. Okay. So on your screen now, you'll see a copy of Table 14, Barriers for Specific Groups and Populations. So individuals with more complex needs need to be provided with resources and information about programs and agencies that can assist in addressing their specific barriers. So in the 2024 Grantee Manual, we provide specific information regarding challenges for certain groups and populations. We won't review that table in detail, but again, the intention is to make you aware of this resource, and it can be found in the appendix of the 2024 Grantee Manual on page 96. All right, opting in and out of wraparound services. Illinois Works views impactful wraparound services as central to the participant's success. As discussed earlier, the services are only impactful if they are what the participants need to be successful. Be sure Illinois Works Be sure that the IWRS wraparound service assessment is comprehensively completed with each participant. Assessing participants' needs requires cultivating a relationship with participants and active listening. And I think we're going to talk a little bit more about active listening later in the program. Accessing needs is an ongoing process because participants' needs may change as they move through the program. For example, a participant may enter the program during the time of year when children are in school, but during the summer months, the participant may need childcare assistance. Participants can opt in and out of services throughout their tenure in the program. Each time, I'm sorry, um, Participants can opt in and out of services throughout their tenure in the program. So if at a later time after the career assessment has been completed, if a new need were to become evident, then that new wraparound service would simply be added to that student's profile in IWRS. Okay. Okay. Are there any questions before we move on? If there are, you may feel free to unmute your line or you can post your question in the chat. Carlita, if you let me know if there are any questions, I'd appreciate that.
So far, Monica, we don't have any questions.
Don't have any questions. Well, I'll take that I did an excellent job, or that people will contact myself or Dan afterwards if they have any specific questions. So thank you all so much. The next thing we're planning is a 10-minute break before we move on to section 5 with Dan Martinez. So we will start our 10-minute break now at 10:38. If you would be back at 10:48, we would appreciate it. Thank you.
All right. Well, welcome back, everyone. Hope you had a chance to stand up and maybe move around a little bit during that break. And so we have, I think, 4 more sessions to cover. So we are just about halfway through. We're going to start with student support services. We're going to ensure that by the end of this section, you're able to identify the location of student support services on the pre-apprenticeship life cycle, describe the role of student support services, determine the necessary support for your participant population, respond to student support alerts in IWRS, and comply with ADA requirements. So we'll talk a little bit about that as well. Um, so most of you should be familiar with this this slide. This is the pre-apprenticeship life cycle. And as you know, the program requirements for Illinois Works pre-apprenticeship program are organized in the pre-apprenticeship life cycle. This outlines the steps that participants take as they move through the pre-apprenticeship program, from initial program outreach all the way through post-transition follow-up. Each stage demonstrates an integral step in preparing participants to enroll in a DOL registered apprenticeship program, which of course is the purpose of the pre-apprenticeship program. Student support services, highlighted there in red, is step number 5 on the life cycle. Student support services are supports that address academic needs. So unlike wraparound support services, as we just heard Monica discuss, which are opt-in services, student support services can be mandatory for participants based on, again, the academic needs, things such as subpar attendance or subpar post-assessment performance. So the student support services coordinator is responsible for academic needs of the students, specifically implementing the student support services, their participant progress reports, action plans that may be necessary, monitoring attendance, monitoring their post-assessment performance, coordinating makeup sessions or post-assessment retakes, and tutoring services for the participants. So you can refer to section 6 of the 2024 grantee manual for more information on some of the requirements for the student support services coordinator. So just one thing to remind you that in most cases, we are not indicating that there needs to be somebody with that actual title, student support services coordinator, at your organization. A lot of times they may have a different title or they may be fulfilling more than one role, but it is important that the role and responsibilities of that role are fulfilled. So while participants may opt into some services, such as requesting additional tutoring for math or reading, requesting additional information on a topic that was discussed, or instruction that they were given. Other services, such as making up hours for missed courses or retaking post assessments, after not achieving a minimum required score, are mandatory in order for that participant to complete the program. So tailored academic support that meets the participants' needs with the goal of maximizing their ability to be academically successful in the program and obtain the offered credentials and certifications that they're going to need is essential for their success. So again, these supports could include retesting, makeup sessions, tutoring, among other academic supports. So let's get back into Mentimeter. I know that during the break, some of you may have logged out, or your session may not still be active. So if you need the link, uh, uh, it has just been placed in the chat for us. So that's great. Thank you, Carlita. So we are going to start with this first question. What academic needs are your participants presenting with the most? So for the student support services coordinators, right, when you look at your cohorts, what types of needs are you seeing? And some of them can be specific to your program and the outreach that your program operates, right? So based on the demographics of your organization's outreach, are you catering mainly to veterans or to women? What types of academic needs might be specific to those audiences? So we have, well, a lot coming in here. Nervous test takers, extra math help requiring tutoring, digital literacy, that's down there a couple times, additional math assistance, construction math, refreshing math skills. So yeah, definitely math is a big component there of what everyone's looking for. So those are the needs that they are presenting with. Thank you for sharing. We've had about 11 people share their thoughts there. I know we have more than 30 on the WebEx here. So again, if you haven't had an opportunity to log back into Mentimeter, please do so. We do ask that everyone engage and participate in these mandatory sessions. So we'll look forward to maybe on this next question, a little bit more participation. What student support services are your participants taking advantage of? So we just asked about what needs do they have. So what types of support services have you been offering, and do they take advantage of the most? Some of these might be pretty obvious based on the needs that you all had mentioned. So I was going to say math tutoring is probably going to be one of the most common responses. So thank you for sharing that. Um, is So continue to share those if that's what you're seeing that your participants have a need for. Go ahead and enter that in. If there's a second most requested service or most shared service by your organization, feel free to share that. Or even if it's an outlier, we can, we'd be happy to talk about that and see what what types of unique services that maybe you had to share with your participants. So again, a lot of tutoring there. That's fantastic. Thank you for sharing that. Makeup sessions, makeup tests. Certainly, 100% attendance is not possible for most people. So they're going to need those supports. And I'm certainly glad that everyone is providing those. We see some technology, laptop, computer training. So making those things accessible to your participants, that is very beneficial. So thank you. I know some organizations have computer labs, some have laptops that the participants can check out and take home. Sometimes hotspots so that they can have access to that technology, but then they also need that digital literacy, right? They need the computer training. So we have math and business administration, makeup sessions again, more tutoring, math, homework tutoring, digital literacy. Fantastic. So thank you all for sharing those thoughts. Again, I can't stress that enough. One of the reasons we like to make sure we start off all of our meetings with introductions is so that we can learn from one another. And I know that was hugely beneficial at the regional meeting. So for all of those that are sharing your thoughts and the things that your organizations do, I really appreciate it. So In the grantee manual, there is a table 15. It's the academic focused barriers and services. And so we can look at that and see other types of examples that of barriers that participants might have, right? And then what that challenge becomes for the participant, and then what type of support services that you can provide. So this table is available on page 100 of the 2024 Grantee Manual. I'll just share some highlights for it. If we could go back one slide. So certainly low levels of basic math literacy are a challenge, and so that's a prerequisite for entering most apprenticeship programs in the construction and building trades. So, a natural support for that is tutoring, and we saw a lot of that. There's also sometimes low levels of reading literacy, right? So, in a similar vein, you know, providing additional tutoring, developing individual plans for your participants to boost their support on that is essential. And then, of course, we talked about digital literacy and their computer skills. Missing class time. We'll talk about some of the policies there in a moment, but it's very important that your organization has have policies set in place, and that those are all provided to the participants so that they can be aware of what's required, and then what their options are, and how they can make up that time. Because again, this is it is about overcoming barriers and helping participants succeed. But of course, there need to be guidelines and structures in place. So, thank you, Jeff. If we can go ahead and we'll go to the next section there then. So when we've talked very much about the tutoring already, and so we'd like to discuss some of the best practices. So the first thing to remember is that tutoring is not just a singular event. I mentioned just a moment ago about establishing individual plans, right? So these are something, tutoring sessions should be something that are really part of an individualized education plan that is developed for participants that need it, and should be something that are coordinated over the length of your cohort to support the success of the participants. So, it certainly should be structured. It should have some metrics in place, some guideposts, and creating a plan for even longer term engagement with all things in the Illinois Works Pre-Apprenticeship Program. We need to ensure that we're not just providing a support for right now, but a support for long-term success, right? So that that's the same for wraparound services or transition services, and certainly these student support services, the academic services that we're discussing. And then additional resources should be provided for participants, right? If a person is currently in your program and has reading literacy needs or math support, this is something that's going to take many, many months for them to maybe build proficiency. And while we may be able to assist them during the length of your cohort to move them to a point where they can successfully take a registered apprenticeship program math test, there's certainly going to be more math during that apprenticeship program, right? That's going to be something, and then they're going to use throughout their career. So these are probably supports that they're going to need for a long time. And then, as I mentioned, because it is a structured process, we're going to need to make sure that the Student Support Services Coordinator has established a way to follow up on the progress. So, thank you. The role of your tutors, we want to make sure we are understanding that a tutor is not just somebody who is, say, good at reading or good at math, right? They are a private instructor. And so they should have all the capabilities of the instructor. And so the requirements for the tutoring position really should be similar to that of your instructor. And in the best case scenario, a lot of times it's your instructors themselves that can provide that tutoring support, right? So if a person needs additional assistance with, some of the construction drawing training that they received, that additional one-on-one tutoring hopefully could be fulfilled by that same instructor, not just someone, again, who is good at reading construction drawings, because being good at something and being good at teaching something are two very different skills, right? So it's not, if you think back to your, primary schooling and secondary educations, um, a history teacher is not just someone who has studied history. They've also studied education and they understand how to teach. So these are some of the thoughts listed here by an editorial team from Indeed on what really makes effective tutors. So we have things like patience and positivity, empathy, confidentiality. So you can see the list, and these are all really important. They're important to all learners, but adult learners, have even more requirements to feel comfortable in the space and allowing themselves to open up to learning new things. So when we look uh, at monitoring the students and the participants and how they're going through your program, student support can be provided when a participant demonstrates the need, and that can be identified uh, through a lot of different ways. It can be identified through your instructors, but it can also be identified through things like your case management and even your data entry. So it's the expectation that uh, participants achieve at least an 80% or higher attendance and a 70% or higher on post assessments in order to successfully complete a given training module. No, there are some exceptions I'll mention in just a moment, but if students drop below those attendance or performance thresholds, then they're required to take those makeup hours or retake the post assessments. And so it's important to make sure that these requirements are updated and outlined in the participant's commitment letter at the beginning of instruction. And looking at attendance, again, I mentioned that that 80% attendance threshold, that is per training module, right? A lot of times we get questions saying, well, we have 200 hours of overall instruction in our cohort that lasts for 16 weeks. Do they just have to hit that 160 hours? And the answer is no, it's per module. And it'll wind up being more than 160 hours, certainly, because there are certain modules, like, say, OSHA 10, that require 100% attendance. So, the Student Support Services Coordinator is ultimately responsible for ensuring that the participants know and understand these expectations. I mentioned IWRS. IWRS is designed so that if the attendance that is entered is below that 80% threshold, that it will add a red flag alert to the overview page for attendance. So was there a question just now? No? Okay. And then post-assessment scores. If a participant scores lower than a 70% on an exam, IWRS would also issue a red flag on that overview page, but for post-assessment scores. And of course, post-assessment scores are required at the for every single training module, right? Orientation is one that has an exception in that it can be pass-fail instead of being an actual score. So it can go in as a 100% if the participant passes, but it requires the post-assessment score nonetheless. All right. It's important that these requirements are tracked in IWRS, and that the if any of the red flags are, alert you to an issue, that those are resolved and part of, again, the participant's plan, and that any questions about how to manage those flags or update things in IWRS. I know there was a question earlier today about how to add wraparound services in IWRS. Keep in mind, on the partner guide, there is there are IWRS tutorials, and Carlita had placed that in the chat already. Those so I know we had mentioned you can contact your grant manager, but certainly, those should be your first choice of going there, making sure you have watched those and understand how to use IWRS. And then if you still have questions, definitely reach out to your grant manager. So identifying and removing those flags, your staff of instructors will be able to identify that, obviously, through their own materials and data entry. If they have access to IWRS, they'll be able to see that overview page and easily identify those red flags alerts. We also have reports that can be run to identify those. So those flags will be added to participant profiles only for not meeting those attendance and post-assessment requires. But the root of why the participant is struggling could be academic or not academic, right? So for an academic need, they may need that support, that tutoring. Obviously, they might need a makeup class, but it's important to identify, well, what was the non-academic need that caused them to miss class in the first place, right? Was it connected to a child care issue or a family member care issue? Was it connected to transportation? It's really important that the organization works cohesively to identify what the root causes are, even if it's an academic solution on the forefront. In the background, it may also require a wraparound service support as well. All right. So once a red flag does appear, the student support coordinator should meet with a participant to determine whether that red flag is truly needs that additional non-academic support. So during this meeting, and in collaboration with the participant, the student support services coordinator should develop an action plan that outlines what actions the participant needs to take to get back on track. Maybe it's getting their car fixed and attending the wraparound or the makeup sessions. So it might be multiple things. And then the action plan can be added to IWRS by adding the service, whether it's the makeup service or the transportation assistance service, into IWRS, as we were just discussing. And actually, I had looked it up. That is in IWRS session 3 that we discuss adding services to the various goals. And if it turns out, as I've been saying, that it is a wraparound service need that they have, then the wraparound service coordinator should be engaged as well, and they should be made aware of it. So one of the things we want to stress is that the student support services, whether they are required or the participant is opting into them, are not punitive. Even though they show up as red flags in IWRS, that is meant to highlight them and not to be a negative. And it should be seen as an opportunity, to provide that additional support. And again, a lot of times there is a root cause to it that it's going to help you uncover. So these really should be seen as triggering a safety net and not be viewed as a punishment, and not be expressed that way to the participants. So I mentioned that it's important to have, policies, and that the participants all received policies for, the makeup sessions and post-assessment retakes. So in the grantee manual, template 14 is available for organizations to utilize as a reference, and then build that into the policy that works for their organization. We also have template 15, which then goes further into the actual session and post-assessment policy that you might want to use. So let's go to Mentimeter and engage a little bit more about what partnerships your organization has established to help provide those student support services. So again, we talked about this from the very beginning of onboarding. So if you can remember back to there, to that point, whether you're a new grantee and that onboarding was just this January and February, or whether you're an organization that has been with us for years, we stress that all of these support services, whether we're talking wraparound support services or the student support services, transition services, all of these support services, require outside assistance, right? There isn't one organization that can probably provide every single support service that is needed. And so partnerships are extremely valuable. I mean, especially on the transition side, right? You have to form outside partnerships with registered apprenticeship programs and contractors. So, but here focused kind of on the student support services, what partnerships have you established? So we have a couple of responses already. Partnerships with schools in the area for participants to stack services and boost accessibility. So stacking services, I've heard that term before. I'm not all that familiar with it, but I'd be interested to hear more. If I'm your grant manager, I definitely reach out to me. I'd like to hear more about how that works. So reaching out to college students for tutoring. So, that's a novel approach. Again, one of the things to be mindful of is that what you're looking for in a tutor is an educator, right? I think one of the best practices that I've seen and heard are some grantees reach out to retired teachers, retired math teachers, or retired English teachers to provide some of that tutoring support. So that's something to consider as well. Partner with teachers to help students who need additional help. Exactly. I mean, they could be current teachers as well, but sometimes the retirees are interested in doing it more as on a volunteer basis. So either one, works. Speakers who are interested in, who are in areas of interest for students. Right, so that can span a lot of the program needs, right? So that sometimes can fall into student support services, sometimes fall into mentoring and alumni networking as well. North Star Digital Literacy and Google Classroom. So I've heard definitely North Star Digital Literacy has been a resource that a lot of organizations in workforce development utilize. Partner with outside tutoring services, neighborhood services, libraries, teachers. Certainly libraries offer a lot of support, right? They offer digital literacy support. They offer reading support. They offer, in some cases, math support. So that is an excellent service. And of course, you know that those library services are going to generally be at no cost. So as a community college, we have student support, we have student services department available to our students. Right. And, one of the things that community colleges, and We have community colleges as grantees. Obviously, that's who had written that. But it's also important to know that as grantees, you have a community college in your area that you could partner with and take advantage of and leverage some of those resources as well. I always say that community colleges have so many resources available to the residents in their area that are underutilized. So certainly that's a very strong advantage for community colleges. Thank you for sharing that. And then online digital literacy courses. Yep, very important. All right, so looking at the Americans with Disabilities Act or ADA requirements, um, you know, it that prohibits discrimination against people with disabilities in multiple areas. So whether that's employment or transportation, public accommodations, access to state and local government programs and services such as this one, and communicating. Illinois Works programs are ethically and legally responsible for adhering to administering the requirements according to the Americans with Disabilities Act. And so each of the pre-apprenticeship programs, each of your organizations are responsible for compliance with the ADA. That means that your program should have an ADA coordinator and a designated ADA coordinator, provide public notice of your programming, have an established grievance policy, a way for an individual to notify of a challenge, conduct self-evaluations, and to develop a transition plan regarding accessibility when necessary. So before we go to the next section and I hand this back off to Anna, are there any questions about what we've just discussed in student support services?
So far, Dan, I don't have any questions in the chat.
All right. Well, great. Well, thank you all for your time. I will see you again in section 7, but I'll hand things over to Anna for section 6. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you so much for that. It was both Dan and Monica, super helpful information. And now we're going to talk about building rapport and connections. And this is something that our friends at Lewis University had shared with us that they do really well in even in the interviewing process. And it's certainly important as you develop those relationships with your participants, with your pre-apprentices, in order to have them feel comfortable enough with you to reach out when they do need help and to trust you to share things with you that will help you help them. By the end of this section, you'll be able to explain the importance of rapport building with participants, employ rapport building best practices, practice active listening, cultivate those relationships with participants, explain the impact of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and describe the role of intrinsic motivation. The impact of rapport building. At a previous organization that I worked with, I ran a leadership development program, and I developed a rapport with my students in that program. And as a result, just one small example of the impact of rapport building, a former student, after the program had been over for a good 6 months or so, she felt comfortable enough with me to reach out to me to tell me that she was having issues with her manager that she felt was related to, she felt she was being racist, quite frankly. And she felt comfortable enough to reach out to me. And as somebody who worked in HR, I was able to direct her to the appropriate department to take her complaint. So if I had not built that rapport with her, she might not have felt comfortable enough to reach out to me, and she may not have been able to be directed to the resource that she needed at the time. And she's, since in process and it's all going well, just, hey, what's happened to her? But I share that story to exemplify the importance of not only having supportive services, but of who you're being when you're delivering them and working with these folks. The act of storytelling, which is what I just did, creates a connection. It builds familiarity. It develops rapport for those listening. And I offer that reflection as a way of saying you too might be able to utilize storytelling when you are building rapport as a rapport building tool in your program, because we all relate to stories. We all want to hear about other people who have made it. And if somebody had put earlier into when I asked a question that some people are struggling with their own internal the voices in their head and the stories that they have about themselves, and sometimes through storytelling you can really help people with that. We're going to do an activity now where you will go into breakout rooms. We're going to put you in small groups. And in your small groups, I think you can go to the next slide.
We're not able to get them into small groups at this point.
Got it. We're not doing small groups, so we're going to do this as a large group activity. I'd love for you, anybody who's willing, to raise your hand and come up mute and share a story about a participant or client that you've had a positive impact on. And so this could be from any position. It could be your current role, and maybe it's somebody who's in the program right now. Maybe it's a previous job that you had or a previous role in your current organization where you developed a rapport with somebody that you were serving, and as a result, you were able to help them. Do I have any brave souls out there who are willing to share?
I'm gonna be brave. This is Gail Newcomb with the Women's
Awesome.
Limitation
Thanks,
Program.
Gail.
Thanks. So it's actually this program, I know Jatan is on as well. She had a lot to do with it as well. There's a young man in our program. He's the youngest in the program. So he just recently graduated from high school. So he just has a different lifestyle, I would say, than the other people that were in the class that had already started working and things like that. So um, I noticed originally he wasn't taking the classes as serious, kind of sleeping in the class a little bit until we say something, didn't really participate. And Jatan, I think, did a fantastic job of engaging with him and talking with someone that could help him. And that I see just night and day. I was there today this morning because I wanted to actually get some pictures of them. They're actually doing some work on some things, and I got there earlier than the building opened. He pulled up right behind me. I was so shocked. He had his boots on, he was in gear, he had the PPE on, he was ready to do what he needed to do. So I was so excited, and I let him know that I'm so proud of him because it's night and day. And he texts me, "Hey, I brought a toolbox. I'm gonna start looking at the things I need to buy for myself." I am so proud of him. I feel like this is my child. So I'm like, oh my God, that is such a huge 180 degree from where he was at. This is a young man that took off his birthday and told me it's my birthday, I'm going to party. So, so proud. Yes. So anyway, that's my
Gail,
story.
thank you so much for sharing. Obviously, Jatan made such a huge impact in this young man's life and turned him around, made it possible for him to become that person who was engaged and who is succeeding and who will move on to the next step. And it's because Jatan cared and bothered to step in and engage with this young man and develop a rapport and be able to build that trust and make that difference for him. So thank you so much for sharing that. I want to feel good too. Do I have another brave soul, somebody who
Uh,
might want to follow up with a story of your own?
Anna, we have Deborah Jossel with her hand
Great.
raised.
Awesome. I don't know why I can't see all the hands raised, so thank you for telling me, Deborah. Are you able to come off mute? All right. One more. All right. Is there anyone who, I know that Gail is a hard act to follow, and you may have a story that's not, it doesn't demonstrate that complete and utter transformation, but do you have a story of making a difference, making a small difference in someone by building rapport with them? All right, I'm going to keep going. Thank you, Gail. Again, that was a beautiful illustration of what I was talking about. And I'm sure that everyone in the room could relate to the importance of that. Let's move on. We're going back to Mentimeter. Using Mentimeter, please answer the following question. What specific techniques will you use to build rapport with your program participants? Or do you? Let's actually start with that. What techniques do you use to build rapport with participants? This is a great place to learn from each other. What's something that you say? Is it words? Is it body language? Is it something that you do? What are your techniques? Honesty, I love that. Yeah, being authentic, being honest with them about what's happening, about where they're at, about the program, and I'm sure other things. Positive affirmations goes a long way. Do you know, researchers did a study about how many positive pieces of positive feedback or affirmations uh, should be offered versus constructive or redirecting feedback. And what they found is that the most successful teams, it was a ratio of 6 to 1, where people were receiving 6 times as many positive affirmations as they were pieces of constructive feedback. So important. Shared experiences, yes. Letting them know that they are not alone, they're not the only one, sharing experiences with them. And it sounds like shared experiences like this, that may not be what you were talking about. I'm going to take another stab. Having experiences that people do together. This is something maybe you have a party together for people or bring people together in some way outside of the regular classroom to have them share experiences. Meeting with them individually, that one-on-one contact and conversations is so important. Using their name, I love that. And that's true. I love that when people use my name in a conversation. I will say, as someone whose name is frequently mispronounced, you might want to just add, if you're not 100% certain how to pronounce someone's name, it's really easy at the beginning to say, how do you pronounce your name? And they will so appreciate your consideration and hearing their name in conversation. Providing empathy, absolutely, that you understand what they're going through. Eye contact, kindness, one-on-one conversations, initiating that contact. Don't wait for them to come to you. After class events to bond, usually with food, that's really nice. Remembering or following up on an important, maybe it's a birthday, some piece of information that they've shared with you. Maybe somebody has passed who was important to them in their life. Asking them, how are you doing? How was the funeral? Or happy birthday. Greeting with a handshake. That's really nice. Shows respect, and it's making that personal connection again. Weekly check-ins. That's nice. You have a system. Whoever wrote this down, you have a system for making sure that it doesn't fall off and that you have that regularity of contact, and just listening. And we certainly cannot overstate the importance of listening. Everybody has such a deep need to be heard. And by listening, you not only can figure out what needs they have and therefore be able to serve them that way, but you address a very important human need, which is to be heard. So here's some techniques and tips that we've got that we collected to share with you. Remember participant names, be prepared for participant interactions. Not being properly prepared for instruction or for participant meetings can make them feel like it's not a priority. So being on time, if you've set up a time, being on time is important. Grading participants, somebody talked about that, having the necessary resources available for that person, or following up with them after meetings. All of that can strengthen your connections to your program participants. Finding common experiences or opinions. Doing so can help you root that relationship and provide a shared connection. Someone shared that was important in their experience. And maybe it's something as simple as students are from the same neighborhood. Maybe you all attended the same school. Maybe you like the same sports team. Any way that you can find to connect with them as a human being will help. And be aware of body language. Nonverbal communication can be more important than verbal communication. It's important to be mindful of the messages being sent by your hand movements, by your facial expressions, by your vocal tone, volume, how far you're standing, the distance from participants. All of that plays into it. And let's talk about active listening. Building rapport requires you to be mentally and emotionally present. I am willing to bet that all of you are in this business because you love people and you want to be people. You want to help people. And I'm also willing to bet that you have an amazingly huge amount of work on your plate. So it is important to ring fence that time, even if you're only spending 2 minutes with that person, to be 100% present with them. And if even more so if it's a half an hour, so you're not checking your email, you're putting away your electronics, you're closing your laptop, you're facing them, you're turning away from your monitor so that they know that they have your full attention. Verbally clarifying understanding. Uh, and you can do that by reframing what they said and repeating it back. And that's a really nice technique because it helps people feel heard and it also allows you to check your understanding. Someone tells you, and it may take them a minute or more to tell you what's going on with them. And if you can repeat back to them the heart of what you heard, oh, wow, I'm hearing that X, you feel this way, or you had this experience, or you're struggling with this. And if you got it right, then they're like, oh, thank God. Yes, someone understands what I'm going through. And they're much more willing and it's more likely they'll continue engaging with you. If you haven't understood, then that gives them a chance to clarify for you what they meant. You want to ask probing and open-ended questions. And by so closed-ended questions are questions that elicit a one-word response. How was school today? Good. How are you? Good. Bad. Did you take all your classes? Yes. It's just right. It doesn't take you anywhere. Open-ended questions are questions like, how are you feeling? Or well, that's not a good example. There are questions like, what are you thinking that you about your career after this program ends? Or what kind of needs might you have that we're not addressing? Or you actually could probably help us with that. If you've got good open-ended questions that you're asking participants to get them to open up, do you mind sharing them in the chat? I'm going to keep talking while you do that. Be mindful of their verbal and nonverbal communication. So they might be saying one thing, but you're sensing something else. It's okay to kindly and gently ask about that. I'm not going to say call them out on it, but ask them about it. Oh, I hear you're saying this, but I sensed some hesitancy in your voice. Or you're saying that you're really excited, but there's something about your tone of voice that makes me wonder, is there something that's bothering you? It's okay to do that. In fact, it can be a way of people then feeling safe to open up for you if you do that. And
Okay,
we
we
already
don't
talked
have
about
any
some of them.
questions in the chat.
So you're saying there are or not?
We do not have any in the chat.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. All right, cultivating relationships. When you build rapport, you want to start cultivating relationships based on transformational versus transactional interactions, right? So we live in a society where a lot of things are transactional, meaning you do this for me, I give you, it's a quid pro quo. I go to the store, I buy something. I'm looking online for service. Hey, can you give me that? How much does it cost? Great. And that gets into our psyche. But it's important to remember that these are people. And I'm sure that that's why you're in this business anyway, because they're people. And so they're not things to shovel services into. They're human beings with emotions and dreams and visions for their life and challenges and relationships that they're maintaining. Early on in our interactions with participants, we teach them what they can expect from us. Are we going to focus only on what needs to be done? And then when they leave the program, they're no longer on our task list, or will we be a long-term connection and support for them? A transactional interaction is where it's purely task-based, but a transformational interaction enables opportunity for growth and connection. That's what you're looking for, to create a relationship that creates an opportunity for growth and connection for them. How can you tell if you're transacting versus transforming? I'd like you to think about the last time a participant came into your office or classroom. Were you prepared for them? Did you greet them? Did you physically move away from the task you were doing and hold a conversation with them? What details did you recall from your last conversation? Were they looking forward to meeting with you? Did the conversation focus solely on the technical components of their experiences, such as classes attended or tests completed? Or did they share how they felt about the experience? What parts of the program were they enjoying? Difficult moments they may have been experiencing. If there was a transformational interaction, participants likely left that conversation learning that you are a resource for them, that you heard them, that you saw them, and you were willing to support them. It is critically important for all staff to be that person for them, but especially for wraparound service coordinators and student support coordinators, because you will be working with participants when they are most in need and seeking someone they can trust. Let's move to the next slide. Let me just ask if no, let's do this. Let's talk about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Why is addressing these needs important? We're going to answer that question. But first, exploring Maslow's hierarchy of needs is one of the most, this is one of the most popularized tools to understand human motivation. If you're familiar with this hierarchy of needs, will you please raise your hand, your electronic hand? Do you have anyone who's familiar? I'm not going to make you speak, so feel free. I'm not going to put you on the spot. I'm just curious if this is something, how familiar people are with it. Okay. So I see we have a few, and I'm really happy to introduce the rest of you to this. For those who are unfamiliar, the idea behind it is that as humans, we are not able to satisfy the higher levels of need without the lower levels being fulfilled. There are 5 levels, and you can see these 5 levels here. And those levels begin with the physiological needs. That's water, food, shelter, right? The basic needs for survival. And that's followed by safety needs. So once somebody has those basic physiological needs met, then they can start to think about safety needs, security, employment, resources, health. Once those are met, those 2 areas of needs are met, then they're able to focus on getting the needs for love and belonging met. Friendship, family, a sense of connection. Esteem is next, and this is where we have respect, recognition, strength, freedom. And finally, at the top is self actualization. And this is where someone has all the other needs met and they have a desire to be the best person they can be. Let's go back into Mentimeter, and I'd like you to think about your program participants and answer this question. What categories of these 5 needs are your participants often lacking? And you'll see those, and you can choose all that apply. You don't have to choose only one, you can choose all that apply. So please put into Mentimeter what categories are your participants often lacking in? Esteem, wanting to understand their purpose, discovering their potential. I've seen a theme. They're absolutely, based on what you were sharing earlier, and I know sometimes there's housing issues, there's childcare issues, there are survival issues, and when people come to you, they have all of these other needs that they're bringing with them. And it can be helpful to think about this framework, to think about how can you in your program help to address some of these other higher level needs in Maslow's hierarchy. What are the conversations that you want to make sure get put into some of those classroom sessions that you're doing on the soft skills? Why is supporting these needs important? Let's walk through an exercise using a raising hand. So using the raising hand, your electronic hand, raise your hand if you've ever lost your wallet, had your wallet stolen, or forgotten your wallet at home on a day that you need it. So who's ever lost your wallet, had your wallet stolen, or forgotten your wallet at home when you needed it? So let's use our little hand raise symbol. I see a few people. Really? I'm shocked. I would think that literally every single person is. Wow, you all are, maybe it's just me. I've done this on multiple occasions. I'm seeing more hands start to be raised. Thank you for playing. Um, even keep your hand raised if you found yourself to be distracted during the day or found yourself hitting barriers like Oh, now you can't go to the grocery store, or you can't take care of a bill because now you have to cancel your credit card if your wallet was stolen, that sort of thing. Yeah, it can be really distracting. This is just a simple example, and you can uh, put your hands down now. Thank you so much for your participation. It's a simple example, but even for those who've been lucky enough to never have misplaced or lost your wallet, we can all identify with that feeling of not having what we need. When one of our base needs is threatened, like our ability to get food, shelter, employment, or a sense of security, we can't think about reaching those higher levels like love, belonging, esteem, or self actualization. And this is the same with your participants. And often it's about more than just losing or forgetting their wallet. It could be worrying about how they'll pay to get their car fixed. They're unsure about how to cover their grocery bill. They don't know if they'll be able to pay their electric bill. Worried about their child care, their child care person called in sick. Not all of our participants will face the same barriers, but if they do, the goal of wraparound services, stipends, and student support services is to ease or fully address those needs so participants can focus on those higher levels. When those basic needs are addressed, participants will be able to better show up physically and mentally for training, be able to complete their program, and think about a future career. And that's the importance of the role of every single person on this call right now. You are critical in the success of these participants because you are ensuring that their focus is on their future as much as possible instead of on the barriers. What's even more difficult when those base needs are not addressed is motivation or drive to achieve. We think about what Gail was sharing about her participant, and he was coming and he was sleeping in class. He was lacking some motivation because of some need that he had that was not getting met. Now, many of you might already be familiar with the difference between intrinsic versus extrinsic motivation, but for those who are not, intrinsic motivation is the drive that comes from within each of us. For some of your participants, that might be a drive to achieve self sufficiency. It could be a drive to make an impact in their community by fixing the roads, building schools, rehabbing neighborhoods. Or it could be a drive to be an example for their loved ones. Intrinsic motivation is long-staying motivation, and this is the motivation that likely drove everyone on this call to do the work that you do today. Most people who enter public service, as you all have done, do so because of intrinsic motivation. Many of our participants will join your program for their own internal reasons based on what they value and what their goals are. A key aspect of building rapport begins with learning what motivates participants. And certainly, participants are also motivated by their economic needs and drives, but we just don't want you to forget the intrinsic motivations as well. Not everyone is motivated by the same actions or ideas, but taking the time to learn participant motivations will be invaluable because that is how you will help support them in their moment of need. When they're questioning if they can succeed in the program, when they're unsure about what trade they may want to enter or facing barriers in their career, you can bring them back to that motivation that had them enter the program in the first place. Using Mentimeter, I'd like you to answer the following question. What might some intrinsic motivators be for your pre-apprenticeship program participants? Have a career, yes, to take care of their families. Absolutely. What else? Being able to pay the bills. Yeah, that's huge. Becoming self-sufficient. That is a huge motivator, and it's so important for people as human beings, as adults, to become self-sufficient and feel that pride in themselves. Stability. Yes. Oh, all right. One of it to own a real estate business. And maybe the construction trades is a vehicle for owning that real estate business. Keep in mind if they're not bought into the construction trades, this program is not a fit for them, but thank you. Career, mastering a construction skill. Yes. So there's been a lot of research done on motivation, and the actually intrinsic motivation is a much bigger motivator than extrinsic. So extrinsic is you did well on your test, so I'm going to now give you a reward for doing well on that test, or I'm going to give you a reward for showing up. The intrinsic motivators are more important, and the primary intrinsic motivators are autonomy, relatedness, and and mastery of things. So that mastering, being able to master construction skill, this is their domain of mastery, is really important to someone's just self identity, standard of living, gaining a career rather than a job, being financially stable. Thank you so much. Let's move on because I want to explore some of those extrinsic motivations as well. Are you offering extrinsic motivations? So you think about extrinsic motivation like rewards and punishment. You think about the carrot and the stick analogy. The carrot is a stick of reward, the stick is a consequence. In some of your programs, the carrot might be offering organization-wide recognition for getting the best post-assessment score. The stick could be not getting the full stipend payment. So this is not a case of we're not saying you should not have extrinsic motivators. But it is important to be present to the intrinsic one. So using Mentimeter, please answer the following question. What are some external motivations that you offer in your program, whether it's that carrot or it's that stick? Stipends. Absolutely. And I think it's getting bigger because more people are saying it. Mhm. Stipends, stipends, stipends. Is there a program that's offering any other extrinsic motivators? Praise. Yeah, absolutely. Both types of motivation can be effective. It is important to note that external motivation, I don't, and not praise, because I think praise is motivating for long periods of time. So I'm not saying praise, but in terms of if you are doing rewards and that sort of thing, those should be used sparingly or for short time periods. Actually, and I just read a book about this, and they were saying that those types of rewards are even more effective if you don't tell them in advance. Oh, if you do this, then we'll give you this. Um, if you add, you can after they complete something, if you want to give a reward as a surprise, that is actually something that can be really motivating, really effective. You don't want a carrot and a stick to lose their perceived impact. Any questions or comments? I am curious what you have heard in all of this. And I wonder if maybe in the chat, if everybody can just put in one thing that you've heard from this last section or so far from today that you'll take away with you. One takeaway.
Okay, Anna, I don't see anything in the chat.
All righty, great. We will move on. We have one last short section before we let you go, and I will turn the reins back over to Dan.
Before you do, there is one that did come through. Cherie Gilmer says, active listening with intention.
Thank you, Cherie. That's really great. And if others have ones that you're thinking about as we go along, please feel free to put it in the chat, because we'd love to hear what's been useful for you. Go for it, Dan.
All right, well, thank you, Anna. And we'll see Anna again in just a little bit when she walks us through the evaluation. But Sheree, I want to thank you for that. I remember that the active listening discussion on during the topic of building rapport, and I think that is so overlooked in terms of what what really makes programs successful. And I really think it's building that rapport, because really everything you do is with your participants is kind of contingent upon their buy-in, right? And their trust of you and your organization. And it all starts with building that rapport. Um, so thank you. This is, going to be a rather quick section. We're going to talk about building partnerships. Although it's quick, it's not meant to be unimportant at all. It's just, it's a topic that we've discussed and highlighted. I've even talked about it a little bit earlier today. So by the end of this section, you'll describe the partnerships in the Illinois Works Pre-Apprenticeship Program, talk about potential partners, be able to list potential partners, and be able to explain the importance of the MOU and how it formalizes a partnership. So when you're considering partnerships, you really first you're going to identify your target audience, their needs, and then assess your program's capabilities with respect to be able to providing those services, right? We talked about wraparound services today, student support services. In other trainings, we've talked about transition services. And so once you've identified those and your program's capabilities, then it's time to consider opportunities for partnerships, right? To enhance what you're providing or fill gaps in some of the services that your organization cannot provide in-house. And again, no organization is expected to provide all of those in-house. So, the partnership will allow you to create a bridge to respond to your pre-apprenticeship program participants' needs. Your grant agreement actually requires that you develop partnerships. And they're just a smart way of doing business and ensuring your successful engagement with your participants. So here are some examples of partnership groups that you can strive for. So your local workforce development areas, the WIA and WIOA groups, local and regional apprenticeship navigators, certainly the trades and registered apprenticeship programs, whether they're union or non-union, those will be critical to establish partnerships, and not only for the transition component, but they are often able to assist with possibly some of the tutoring, right? I know many of you use relationships and have developed partnerships to have instructors for certain topics come in from different apprenticeship programs or unions or building trade organizations. So that's always very important. Employers, contractors assisting with discussions on employability skills. And then you have obviously your academic needs that I talked about earlier. So then when you need tutoring in those subjects, you can potentially rely on some of the trainers from those organizations to assist you. Community colleges, that was brought up earlier today, and the wealth of resources that they have, both as our grantees and as your local, the community college in your region. So these partnerships, your organization is, very likely to have different types of them, right? You'll have formal partnerships that will be, codified through an MOU, a memorandum of understanding, or some other written agreement, right? If they're a vendor, you will actually have a formal contract. And then there are less formal partnerships, such as a referral network. All of them are important, whether it's an informal one, whether it's a formal partnership, they can still be strong and valuable relationships. As a real quick, before we go into the Mentimeter, well, you can all jump into Mentimeter while I mention this, but I was working with a grantee, and they were indicating that that they were struggling getting information back from one of their partners. And really what it amounted to was that it was too transactional at that point, right? They were just requesting something. They weren't actually developing a partnership. So it will ultimately benefit your organization in the long run to ensure that these are true partnerships rather than just a transactional relationship. So back to Mentimeter. So what kind of partnerships does your organization have relevant to the pre-apprenticeship program? So these can be partnerships for student support services, those academic needs, for wraparound support services, overcoming some of the barriers, the non-academic barriers that your participants have. They can be partnerships on the transition side. So, whether it's with an American Job Center, workforce board, or a registered apprenticeship program, contractors. Just share with us some of the partnerships, particularly if you have an MOU, that you were able to formalize. Those are always instructional. And really, again, what we hope is, we have a mix of organizations. We have, organizations that have been doing this type of work for over 25 years. We have organizations that are really just getting started in this field. And this grant, actually, this year might be their first one providing this type of programming. And so the idea, though, is that we can all learn from each other. So if you have partnerships that you have established in your 25 plus years of working, definitely share that and help some of these younger organizations learn that. On the other hand, a new organization coming into it, they didn't even know what they didn't know, and they maybe asked a question or formed a partnership that no one had thought of before. So we can all learn from each other. I see some of you have already shared some responses here. American Job Centers and their partnerships, those are, definitely beneficial. Registered apprenticeship program, having them in as guest speakers. They for the new programs, well, and we're all really fairly new, even the ones, that have been doing this for 25 plus years. Your Illinois Works program has probably only been operating for a year or two, maybe in their third year at this point at the most. So alumni, right? You might not have alumni directly out of your program, but in engaging with, union and non-union organizations, you can get some of those folks to help and work with your participants. Habitat for Humanity, WorkNet Legal Aid. Certainly, there are some real basic needs that need to be met and barriers overcome for a lot of our participants, and so it's important to have relationships and partnerships and referral networks to some of the organizations that can help our participants. Construction area companies. We're going to be putting out a list. We did it last year. We're going to keep doing this, putting out lists of contractors that are working on state projects that have to adhere to the Illinois Works Apprenticeship Initiative. So you definitely want to start developing relationships with those organizations, and they're going to be coming to our office in a lot of cases looking for your graduates, and it's even better if you've already established relationships with them, right? So that they already know, hey, I can't wait till that next cohort graduates. Let us come in and maybe we'll do some mock interviewing with them, and they do that because they know that they also then kind of get first dibs on some of your graduates that they can hire right off the bat. So it's kind of a win-win for everybody, and they can sponsor them into the apprenticeship program of their choice. So that can be very helpful. So we have some others here, IBEW and is that Plumbers, Local 30. So we definitely, that's great to see some of these partnerships. Keep those going. Again, it's expectation that your organizations develop partnerships, but then we want it to be easier for you to provide excellent service to the participants. So I think we have time for one more Mentimeter question here. So whether it's through this webinar or just some brainstorming that you've done, what partnerships might you seek, right? You don't necessarily have to have these yet, but are there any partnerships out there that you might be interested in seeking? So I'll let you guys share before I start throwing out some suggestions or some thoughts. But does anyone have any ideas of partnerships again that and these can be informal, they can be more the referral type, or they can be a little bit more structured. What's on your mind about partnerships that you might like to add to your organization's portfolio so that you can add value to your participants? Really getting in there with that mentoring, that is fantastic. I know that a lot of the trade organizations have they have alumni groups, and essentially they're retirees, right? So that is definitely an untapped resource that you might want to explore, having them come in and working as mentors to the new crop of construction professionals. So that's a great one. Trade companies, job site shadowing, for sure. These are definite ways to add value to your participants. Alumni networking events, construction groups and association. So absolutely. Illinois Works Pre-Apprenticeship Program grads. And that goes back to building rapport, right? And really establishing a cohesive culture among your graduates. It's such a hallmark of a well-run program when graduates want to come back. And I'm thinking about anything, right? From an elementary school to a high school to a college to a pre-apprenticeship program, an apprenticeship program. When you have your any workforce development education, when you have people that go through it and are so profoundly impacted positively on their life that they want to continue to go back and give back, that's a hallmark of a well-run program. So it's one of the things we should all aspire to. Quality childcare centers, certainly. I think that's a partnership that everyone should be looking for. Building trades councils, definitely. It's such an easy way to build your network, and it's so important for your participants. I was thinking again. I talked about it a lot, but we had already talked about community colleges, right? If you're not in a partnership with your community college, maybe put that on your list of things to start up. All right. Well, thank you all for sharing. Again, we can't we can't thank you enough that it's so important for us to make sure that this is a network, a true network where we help one another. So it's so much more eventful when we can use a lot of your experience. If there are any questions, you can ask them now. Obviously, we have the Illinois Works Grant Management email address up on the screen. And if not, I'm going to hand it back over to Anna for the evaluation portion.
Thank you, Dan. And you know the drill. We would like your feedback to see what was helpful and what might we adjust in the future. So one last time into Mentimeter, and thank you for staying for this. We just as we expect you to be continually improving in your programs, we ourselves are committed to that same improvement in ours. Let's start with, please share your views on this training by rating the following statements from 1 to 10, and 10 is the highest, 1 is the lowest. To what extent did it meet your expectations? How likely are you to attend a similar event in the future? How likely are you to recommend the training to others? All right. Looks good. It's looking good. Let's keep going. How many do we have? Oh, wait, we're still waiting for people. Okay. Thank you. We got a heart too. Any others? See, we've got 10 people have responded and we've got 40 participants in the room. So let's keep it going. All right, thank you. We have 15. So I'm looking at these numbers. I will tell you, they're a little lower than our usual numbers. So I'll be curious to see what constructive feedback you have for us. To what extent do you agree with this statement? The course was relevant to what I wanted to learn about the subject matter. All right, we have did not address some people's content needs. So I'll be curious again later on when we ask for what we could have done differently. Maybe you can put that in the chat so we can understand for the future. However, I see that we do have the majority of people strongly agree. And we are glad that it was helpful to you. Thank you everyone for responding. Let's keep going. To what extent do you agree with the statement? I plan to apply what I learned. Great. I'm glad to see that it is very applicable for the vast majority of the people who have responded so far. Great. For the most part, applicable, for a few and not. Let's keep going. What improvements might you recommend? So this is your opportunity. If you were one of those individuals who didn't quite hit the mark for you, we are waiting and interested in your feedback. Great. So someone is sharing that they were hoping that it would cover how to enter the information in the system. Thank you for sharing that. More system review. Shorter sessions, hard to block out 3 hours in one day. Yeah. More in system entry. This is very helpful to have all of your feedback here, because I can see that this is not a one-off, that quite a few people are looking for that. So that seems to be a theme, and we will absolutely address that with you in one way or another. We always take your feedback back to our meetings and discuss it to see how we can make sure that we are meeting your needs as our grantees and partners. The system overpowers all of what you covered. Thank you. Reduce times, make it micro trainings, shorter trainings. Thank you so much. Wonderful. All right, great. Should we keep going? What was effective about it? And if we make changes, what would you recommend we keep? Engagement, the review of Maslow's hierarchy. Thank you. Mentee. Great. The engagement. Great. Participant interactions. Breakout rooms. Yes. We were prohibited due to technological limitations today, but yes. Mentee in the chat available, having someone monitor it. Great. Good reminder to remain human-centered in the design and implementation of our programs. Just wait another couple seconds. See if anyone else is finishing up something they want to share. All right, were there any other questions in this, Jeff? Yes, just one last one. Is there anything else you think we should know that has not already been shared? Thank you for answering. Folks are putting no and NA. You've heard me say in previous meetings that if you just let us know no or NA, that way at least we know that you're not to wait for your response. We'll just wait a few more seconds in case someone's writing. And we are going to let you go. Thank you so much, all of you. Thank you for everything that you do for the residents of Illinois. Thank you for being our partners. Thank you for being great to work with. Thank you for your engagement. We have appreciated and enjoyed this session very much, and we'll see you at the next one.